Okay. So today I'd like to cover a couple things. One of them being, talking about alternative revenue streams or how to make your business as a fractional CFO more of a business than just a complicated job, but we'll talk about that second. So Melanie is here, and Melanie's done a lot of presenting at this meeting. And we're going to have her present. Oh, Melanie, you're the only woman on this meeting here. So we're gonna have Melanie present on telling stories and well, I'll tell you what, why don't you explain, so I don't screw it all up, why don't you explain what you're going to talk about?
Sure. So a couple months ago, we started this series where I'm basically walking you through this book called TED Talks. And that I think that talks is supposed to be a verb. So like TED Talks, and it teaches you how to do a TED Talk. So this is part 2 of that.
Okay. So you're going to probably present, so I'm going to hang on. So you should be able to present now.
Do you want me to do that now, or you just change
Yeah,
it?
you're on.
Oh, okay. Great. Let me.
Yeah, so take whatever time you need, and I'll use the rest of the time then to cover the other part of the meeting. Okay?
Okay, great. Can everybody see my screen now? Yeah, okay, excellent. So, as I said, we're reviewing this book, TED Talks, a guide to TED Talks. And before I get into part 2 of that, I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I am a professional marketing and brand strategist. I also am good at culture development and leadership coaching, and I'm a painter. This is a little bit about my personal life. I grew up as a military brat, so I cannot answer the very typical question, where are you from? This is a map of everywhere that I've lived. And starting in being born in Nebraska to Orange County, California, and then basically all of the trips from living with an enlisted Marine as a father. And then that kind of programmed my brain a little bit. And so every 3 to 4 years, I feel like I have to go somewhere. And so I continued doing that after college, or after high school. I moved to West Virginia for a little while, other places in Maryland, moved back to California as an adult, to Denver. I moved to Virginia, and now I'm back in Denver. So this is my journey physically. And this is my path to marketing. So it wasn't a clear path. I didn't go and major in marketing. I started out career-wise running an event and catering place, and learned a lot about management, inventory, how to run a staff, and customer service, and also sales. But I didn't necessarily realize that was what I was doing, even though I was selling weddings and parties for big corporation, like all of the military contractors. This was south of DC. So moved from that to working at a nonprofit, mainly doing door-to-door canvassing. So another sales role, and then also selling vacuums for Dyson, but really thought I could do more with marketing, and ended up going to school for that, and ended up where I'm at because of all those things. And then on the personal side, this is a few things I like to do outside of work. So the first is my siblings and myself at my aunt's house. we're all pretty close and a little bit goofy. So I keep in close contact with them. The middle picture is I have a healthy friend group out here that likes to go to lots of music shows. This is at Red Rocks. Fortunate to be near one of the best venues, if not the best in the country. And then again, I paint. So this is a painting I did of David Bowie for my sister. And this is the book that we're reviewing. So TED Talks, the last session we went over was really on presentation literacy. So this is all about how to present in front of a group. A lot of it is more, the book is more focused in person than it is virtually. And I personally think it'd be interesting for them to adapt it to virtual. But so we went over presentation literacy, how to build an idea. So how to plant, you're basically reconstructing an idea in somebody's mind. Common mistakes you don't want to fall into. And then a through line. So making sure that your talk is always connected. Each piece of it is connected to the point that you want to make or the through line of your thing. So today we're going to go through talking tools and how to get your audience to connect to your through line and the story that you want to tell. And what I'm going to present is just a little bit different than, or the order is different. So this is connection, getting personal, narration, and then explanation and persuasion. I'm going to start out with stories because I think it helps lay a framework for the rest of everything. So the best way to make a connection to people or your ideas to tell a story. So we are hardwired to listen to stories, and there's some really interesting studies that are quoted in the book where I guess anthropologists have studied, they study civilizations, and they've said that they can tell that the discussions that happened during the day were more like about economics or what's going on with your village. And at night, they were more social and storytelling. And often it was by, like elders in the group. So because that was a form of entertainment or gathering, they actually think that biologically, people that could adapt to stories or listen to them through evolution, like our brains are hardwired to listen to them. So if you can bring people with you through your story, then you have a better chance of connecting with them and having that idea stick. So you can develop a character. It could be yourself or like a fictional character that you're bringing somebody along. There should be a little bit of a point of tension in there, like what challenge will you be facing here? And then, like the finish of it. So then what happened? And what's interesting is that when you bring people down these paths with a character, their minds are going to start to work to try to figure out what happens next. So that bit of tension is really, it's great because then you're thinking like, how is this going to be resolved? And they like want to hear the end of what you're saying. So that is one way of presenting, and trying to relate most of the rest of the things to story will also help you out. The next one is, this runs into what I was saying too. So making the connection. So developing the character that your audience can relate to, ensuring that you have an element of tension, and then detail is important, but not too much. So the people are only going to remember I don't know, this is not a factual quote, but like 15% of what you are saying. So make sure that they can follow you and that you're not diving down too far into detail. And then you need to finish the story. So what happened? Is it a relief? Is it emotional? Is it a funny conclusion? There has to be some sort of end to this. Okay, so the next form of doing a talk is explaining. And this works really well when you're doing new concepts or ideas. So you want to really kind of figure out, where is your audience? So if you are talking about, like if I am talking about marketing or branding to a group of marketers, they're going to be more knowledgeable than if I am talking to a group of CFOs. And the starting point is going to be different depending on where those people are. So you want to think, where are they and where do I want them to be at the end of this? And then you want to spark some curiosity. So you want them to be wondering what is going on in this journey that we're about to take together. And so you can build these concepts one by one to help you get to your endpoint. And if the material is really foreign to a lot of the people that you're talking to, then using metaphors and examples are really great ways to help rebuild that concept. So you have this concept in your mind that you are trying to recreate in other people's minds. And by meeting them where they are and then using words and stuff that will help them visualize where they need to go is going to be one of your greatest strengths. Next, we have persuasion. So there's a lot of notes on the screen. Persuasion is a tool that I think it's really noticeable when it's done poorly. So like if you think of a really bad sales pitch, you can tell that person is trying to persuade you of doing something that you don't want to do, and it's not successful. So this one you have to really know, like, again, where your audience is, where you want to take them, and then how do you kind of logic your way into the persuasion. So what you want to do here is your goal is to have your audience think differently. When it's done correctly, or, when you are successful, it's really exciting for everyone involved. You're like, oh, I've changed my mind because I didn't have this piece of information before. And that's like a really interesting way of looking at this concept. And so, yeah, if you're trying to be successful, it's normally pretty rewarding afterwards. So a good way of doing it is by deconstructing pre-existing conditions or pre-existing thoughts, and then rebuilding that in a way that points out how this new way of thinking is going. So the formula that was used in this book is kind of like, you want to prime them for something. So you could say, we all agree that Granny Smith apples are the worst of the apples. And everybody is like, yeah, they're sour, they're terrible. Gala is way better. And then you say, therefore, and I am like not a baker, so this is going to be a really terrible example here, but you're like, therefore, if you use this type of apple, non-Granny Smith, which are probably better for baking now that I'm thinking of it, you're going to have better pies. And people are like, yeah, obviously, because they're a better apple in general, and that's how you're going to make a better pie. So if everybody thought that Granny Smith was number one for pie baking, but then they're just like the worst apple to eat generally, there must be a better apple for pie baking. So if they agree to sentence A, and then you put that into, scenario B, you've kind of like, they can't logic against themselves, or there's tension there. So tools that are useful for that is humor, or really straightforward examples that really like validate your idea. And this is where you can also bring visuals into your presentation. So if you show graphs that show data in a very clear way, then that can also help persuade people. So one of the examples that is used in the book is this TED Talk on how we think about nonprofits. And it's one of the most watched, it's one of the most persuasive, and it talks about how people view overhead costs at nonprofits as like, oh, they're not a good nonprofit because they actually have all this overhead. But in reality, the ones that have more overhead are actually doing a lot more change because the amount of space that they operate in is so much bigger. And so the whole talk is how nonprofits are structurally set up to fail, because when they start to scale, their head count goes up, but that also means that the work that they're doing is a lot more massive. And so that's like done through this series of different graphs and them talking about expanding the size of the pie. So that is persuasion. And then the last way to do your story or to have a presentation is to show them. So we process images 60,000 times faster than we process text. And I have no idea where I put this quote, but I have found like a different tidbit, but it's something about like, we take in like 12 billion bits of information every minute, but our brain only processes like 12,000 of them or something. So all of the rest of that is just sitting in your subconscious. And so if you're trying to explain a new technology, but you have it, sometimes it's like way better to just show them what it is, or to have somebody experience it. So when I was doing vacuum sales for Dyson, one of the first things that I did was just put the machine in people's hands so that they could do it themselves, because they are a lot less clunky and lighter than I think a lot of people realize. So having them experience it was a better way for them to understand what I was trying to say, rather than saying like, oh yeah, it's really lightweight. But like, you can actually physically pick it up and see that it's balanced and lightweight. So if you have like a new technology, or if you're like, think about when I feel like this was more of like a movie thing than maybe an actual thing, but like somebody would go on vacation, you'd have like a slide projector and people would like show you their vacation through their slides before like photos were a thing. And they kind of take you down this path of like, here's where we went vacationing. Like if you've gone somewhere, like sometimes like art and like visual stuff is better shown through images rather than explaining your journey through it. And that is the conclusion of part 2 of the TED Talks book. I think, yeah, that's all I have.
So what are the other 22 slides?
Are there 22 slides?
Yeah, so you're on slide 12 of 34.
Oh, you know what? It's because I have the first presentation in here too.
All right.
It's one long cohesive presentation.
Okay. So any thoughts or comments on what we just talked about?
Yeah, I have a thought if I can. Melanie,
Huh?
I don't know what that is, background noise is. I'm a member of a group that volunteers that coaches startup companies to present to investors. And we always tell them whenever possible to start with a story. You know, why, you know, I had this problem or this happened to me, or my child was sick, or, you know, whatever, something that they can relate to and will touch them maybe emotionally. Or as you say, something humorous, because if you're giving a 15-minute presentation and you don't catch the interest in the first 30 seconds, probably the rest of it is, the rest of it might as well be talking to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So by the way, has anybody on here ever gone to see one of those TED Talks? The TED Talks X or whatever they are? So I went to one a few weeks ago. So has anybody else ever been to one? Yeah, I'm sure you've seen them, right, on the videos. In person, they're even better, and so I went to a TEDx, which is not, I guess, it's like the minor leagues, so you got TED Talks or the big one, and then there's these TEDx's all over the US. If you ever get a chance to go, it's really worth it. I brought my wife kind of as a test, and she actually enjoyed it too. So, I knew I would, but wasn't sure if she would like it. So they're really nice. And, some of them aren't so good. Some of them are really super good, and then there's a lot of medium ones, but it really gives you a better, a lot of really good examples on how to tell stories. So does anybody else have anything on stories? Okay, I'm going to like call on somebody. So Carlin, you got yourself your video off. By the way, it really helps if you guys leave your videos on so we can see each other. It's a lot more interesting. So if you can, that'd be great. So Carlin, have you ever used, where'd you go? Everybody's moving around because they're turning their video on. So Carlin, have you used stories I know you're just starting off at all, but has Mark or Brendan talked to you guys about telling stories?
Yes, in fact, I've been trying to kind of pull some short, concise stories together to help in meeting with potential clients. And that's one of the things that Brendan and Mark have also talked about, that telling stories is a much better way to get your skill set across, make it match with what the prospective client needs, get them hooked, get them interested. So yes, that's something I'm trying to do a better job of and practicing a little bit.
Yeah, it's always good to practice them. So just real quick, Carlin, you want to tell them who Mark and Brendan are and what you're doing there?
Oh yeah, Mark and Brendan Filbert and Mark Blackton are leading a workshop training cohort on freeway to fractional, where it helps go through the whole process of training, teaching people how to do what fractional work means, how to do it better, and really give you a lot of insight. They have videos, they have workbooks, and then there's separate meetings, online virtual meetings to talk about things in detail and get some guidance. It's very good. And I know they've had some links and some promotions in the FING organization and others. So I would highly recommend it. I'm going through it right now. Very, very valuable.
Great. Yeah, so when I was coming up through the ranks and I worked for this one guy who was the president of a company, and he's the one that taught me about stories. He had all these really good stories that he would tell all the time. And after I got to know him, I realized he just kept telling the same stories over and over. So like when he would meet people from the outside or a new employee, so he had like this package of stories. There are a lot of them, but I worked with the guy for 15 years, so eventually you start to hear them all. And I talked to him about it one time, and he taught me. He explained it as tapes. He says, so I got this is back before hard drives and stuff. So he would say, yeah, I have these tapes that I kind of like keep in the back of my mind, like a library. And there are all these stories. And when something comes up, he says, I just bring that tape forward and I tell that story. And so that's actually, I learned a lot from that, and I do that myself now. So I keep, I have stories, I develop stories, I practice them. So like when I've been selling CFO work for 22 years now. And so I have tapes for just about everything. And I think of them that way. So it's like I categorize them. And as soon as somebody sparks a topic, I can bring that tape forward and tell that story. So, I'll practice those stories on people. They don't know I'm practicing on them, but I'll bring kind of like what I do here. I'll bring a story that I want to tell, and I'll tell it to you guys, and I'll see how it resonates, and I'll see how it goes when I say it. And then I'll modify it until I finally get it where, it's like what Melanie was showing. You got to have that, you got to build that tension, and you have to have the tension releaser, right? Like, is it funny? Is it funny ending? Is it a dramatic ending? And sometimes I'll tell the same story sometimes with a kind of humorous ending, and sometimes with a more dramatic ending. Like I tell this one story about this company that was going under when I met them, and we worked together, and hang on a minute, I just lost you. And so the ending of it is that they sold the company for a lot of money. And so that can have a little bit more of a dramatic, like, yeah, way to go, Jeff, you made them lots of money. Or I can make it humorous by saying, at the end, I'll say, and unfortunately, I didn't have any equity. So I say it in a way that makes it a little more funny. And so you can, depending on your audience and who you're talking to, if you're talking to a bunch of cynics, I'll tell them the story where I didn't have any equity. If I'm talking to a bunch of really rah-rah people, I'll tell them the story that I made these guys lots of money and you're rah-rah, So you can change your story ending as well. So stories are incredibly important when you're in sales. That's the bottom line. People aren't buying from us because we're good at financial statements, so debits and credits. They want to know that we're going to save them. So how many in here are working with clients as a fractional CFO? Okay, so you could probably agree that most of your clients you've gotten are because somebody's in trouble, right? Nobody, I'm going to tell you this, I've worked with over 100 companies, and nobody ever hired me because their company was going well. They just didn't do it. There was no, now, I guess if you're working for startups, maybe, but usually they're not going to bring you on unless they feel like they're overwhelmed, So they want to know that I have stories where I've saved the day. They want to know that. And so I try to filter as much of that in there as I can. All right.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dave. So being a finance person in large public companies, you're not the guy that explains or gives the persuasion at all. Usually the general manager now takes over. We're going to buy this piece of equipment. It's $1 million. The market's this big, the payback's this, the IRR. We shut up. And if you start doing that, your general manager is not going to be happy with you. So where does one get practice with the persuasion? Like, I've been telling stories in job interviews, but I don't remember what the point was I made or whether I got them to agree that this is a persuasive reason to hire me. I don't think I'm there yet. How do I get practice?
Well, so the obvious ones are you can practice with your wife, or you could practice with your family. It's great at weddings to tell these stories. But they're, or your friends, you know, or actually people you don't know. So David, here's a good way to do it. There's 20 people here, right? Yeah, 20 people on this meeting right now. Hook up with a bunch of them on LinkedIn. And when you talk to them about who you are and what you do, tell them stories. Some of them are going to, they're going to go flat, you know, they're going to be bad stories that, and then you're going to learn from doing that story. But some of them are going to be really good stories. You know, so I do a lot of networking. I meet with a lot of people one-on-one on LinkedIn. And a lot of them are unemployed, you know, like I really support the FANG. And so anybody from the FANG that wants to talk to me about their job or anything, I'll help them. And I actually ran a job club for like 12 years, and we put like 100 to 150 people through there every year. The biggest problem that people have is when I talk to a financial person and I say, tell me about yourself, they immediately want to tell me about the company they work for. So they don't tell me about themselves. They tell me about their company and what their company does and what they sell. And I have to keep bringing them back and saying, no, I want to know about you. I don't want to know about your company. But they want to talk about their company. Part of it is that it's more comfortable because it's like you're talking about that third thing here. You're not talking about me or you, you're talking about some abstract thing. And so it's very hard for financial people to brag. It really is. You know, you talk to a salesperson, they'll brag all day, right? But financial people, we don't do it. You know, we're not trained to do it. We're not thought of to do it. Just like what you were talking about, Dave. You know, when you're talking with your general manager, you're not up there bragging that you did it and all that. But when you're talking to a potential new employer or a customer, you got to start bragging, you know, but not in a negative way, in a positive way. Tell them what you did. Yep, Nate, Nestor.
Hey, David, one tool that I learned, I think it was from way back in the day. I don't know if Stanley Barber Associates is still around. They help company older guys, older people in transition, career transition stuff. They gave me an acronym called PARS or PAR, P-A-R, Problem Action Resolution or Result.
Yeah.
And they basically say structure and start to develop your own PAR or PARS. I'm actually forgetting what the S stands for, but it's a problem action result. And you start to accumulate all these stories,
yeah,
and then you just replay them. So when you hear something that triggers in your memory, hey, here's a lease accounting issue that someone said, hey, I've got problem with lease accounting. Wow. At my last company or 2 companies ago, I had a lease accounting problem. Here was the issue, and here was the issue. Here's what I did. Here was the action that I took to resolve it. And here's the result. We got through the audit, we got through whatever it is, but you start to develop these and you just keep them in your back pocket. And you literally, they say, write them down, put them in that format, and then practice them. And it's just, it becomes a little like a tool in your toolbox that you just continually, develop. Hopefully that's helpful, but it's been helpful for me.
Yeah, Nestor, that's right on. So when I was running that job group, we met twice a month, and we would kind of rotate through a process. And one of the months, like every third month, was storytelling. And I would actually tell people, okay, for the next meeting, you need to have 3 stories. And we would give them that format you just talked about. And we would tell them, write it down, bring your stories, tell your stories. And, people are, like I said, financial people are generally not really good storytellers. It's just not how we're wired. We're good at numbers and all that kind of, and logic and all that kind of stuff, but we don't, that's why I talk about bragging. We don't like to do it, but you have to. And so you got to get past that, your comfort zone on that, and get yourself way out there. And it gets easier and easier and easier. every time you do it. And so, David, you might want to write down 4 or 5 stories, network with some people from the meeting or some of your, other connections, do some one-on-ones and tell them, hey, I'm practicing. Let me tell you some of my stories. When I first learned how to network, back when, Ted, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think way back in another life, I was a district manager in a life insurance company. So I have this terrible two-headed dragon here, where part of it is the finance and accounting analytical side, and the other is the sales side, telling the story. But as I grew up, my father always had stories. He was always telling about this story, or this happened, or whatever. And people loved him. And he was just so, everybody just loved to be around my father. And I always say, one of the things I've sort of coined is, say the magic word, you get either a story or a joke. And sometimes a little joke, a little humor to lighten up the atmosphere is good, and to sort of relax people, a little joke. But if you say, you're talking to a potential client, and you're just having a conversation with them, and they say a magic word that I got a challenge here, I got a problem here. That's when exactly what you were saying, and I think David and Nestor were referring to this as well as Melanie. Pick a story of one of the situations that you worked on and say, here's what we did and here's how we solved that problem. And then you sort of turn it around without being obvious about it and say, we can do the same thing for you.
Yeah.
And so there's, over the years, and everybody here, except for a few, has a bit of gray hair. So we've got enough experience and enough stories and things that we've accomplished in our lives. But just think about that. And like you said, it's okay to talk about a previous company, but when you're talking, or your company where you're working, but talk about what you did for that company, what your accomplishments were, how you helped them. And what did you do? I always say, one of the things I like to say is, hey, my forte has been to be able to find a significant amount of cost reductions. And then I'll go into a series of stories about that. And everybody wants to hear about cost reduction and what you do, or systems development, software systems and internal controls, or whatever it's used. When you're having that conversation, whatever that prospect is saying, as you said, they've got a problem, they got a challenge. Well, here's what we've done, or my team, or whatever, and here's how we can help do that. We've done it for others, we can do it for you. So it's just, you always have a story. Say the magic word. The magic word is whatever the client says their problem is, and then what situation did you have in your life and your career to help solve that problem?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't know if any of you picked up on how Ted has them like in a library. He's got them categorized, the stories, right? You cost savings, doing this, doing that. So, there's like filters that I could see you go through when you're trying to tell your stories. And that's the way to do it. You got to have your filing system of stories in your brain. Yeah. It's great. Okay.
Back in the day when we could actually go to events in person, I used to do a lot of networking, especially when I first transitioned from from a full-time employee to at the time I was deciding between trying to find another full-time job or becoming a consultant, and go to a lot of networking events. And you have to, you come up to somebody and can't say, "Hi, I'm Ben, I'm looking for clients." I mean, you have to have a story, and the best thing you can do is active listening, as Ted said. Give them a chance, to tell you what their problem is, so you can instead of talking about, "Oh, I'm great at this," which they don't give a hoot about, let them tell you, what's important in their world, and then you can leverage off of that and keep their interest by showing, demonstrating that you listen to them and that you have experience in dealing with things like that.
If I may jump in again, Jeff, Ben, you hit the nail right on the head. What you really want to do is get them talking. You want them to talk. You want them to tell you their situation and ask them questions. So one of the best things you can do is have a series of questions you can ask them that might lead to potential problems that they have, that then you can turn around and say, oh, the magic word is, I got an internet security problem. I've got a software problem. I've got my costs here are high, or I've got an HR problem. And whatever it is, then you come in with your, you're the guy with the white hat and the gun and everything, the white horse, and you're going to come in and save the day. You're the good guy.
Yeah, I agree. An interesting thing is that, in fact, that I learned is that if you have a conversation with someone else and they do most of the talking, they're going to think that you're a very interesting conversationalist, because the thing that people enjoy most is talking about themselves, not hearing about you. So
Amen.
you work on that. And like you said, I start off by saying, hi, I'm Ben. What do you do? Why are you at this event? And that gets them talking. I don't tell them anything about me until they tell me about them.
That's
I
right
like
on.
that. Why are you at this event?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's good. So, again, I've been doing this for like 22 years now. And one of the things I found recently, and I have to stop myself, I have so many stories built up that no matter what anybody says, I got a story. And so I got to shut up, because basically what Ben said, because they don't want to hear all my stories, they want to talk. I got to let them talk. So I got to keep reminding myself to be quiet. So, yeah. Yep. All right. So I'm going to segue into part 2. Unless somebody else has something they want to. Oh, that's good. So Nestor just gave us a link. I don't know if you guys see that popping up. In the chat, right? Yeah. Was that, who did that? Nestor? Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple links there. Oh,
I
okay.
just sent it. I just sent it to everybody. I sent it. I wasn't sure with the protocol in terms of sharing
No,
certain
that's good.
comments.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, share.
It's just something I found just in the last few minutes on Indeed. It's a nice summary, and it's more verbal as opposed to like boxes. And I thought it would be just
Cool.
just a different perspective to kind of wrap up this conversation.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things just to be very specific, telling the life stories is everyone knows how to do, and that you can provide detail and you can. So one of the liabilities of a finance person is will probably be shy and not say, well, I did that. I'm the one who saved us the $5 million of working capital, as I called the meeting. But what we also, how do I turn that into, and this is why you need me? How do I craft? I haven't given any thought. Why is that important to the other person? And how do I craft that message?
Yeah. So I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but they tend to figure that out themselves. So if they're talking about the fact that, geez, I don't, I'm trying to raise money, and you say, well, I've done this before, that's all you got to say. Then they're going to start asking you all kinds of questions at that point, because they're going to immediately view you as an expert. And so you don't have to connect the dots for them. They'll do it for you. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to segue into the next part. So when we all start off as fractional people, and we come from industry, we say, okay, for whatever reason, like mine was out of desperation that I ended up with 2 clients because I needed to get paid. And, I wasn't trying to do anything other than earn a living. And so after a while, so that's good. Now you're working for yourself, and you can say, hey, I'm working for myself. And it's a really good feeling, as most of you know. And but then eventually you realize, or I did, I said, okay, all I've got here really is a complicated job. And, because of true business is something that will live on past you, that has, wealth, has value at the end. And so if at the end of the day, you stop working and there's no value there, effectively you're working a complicated job is what I call it for myself. And so, oh geez, it was probably 10 years ago or so, maybe more now, that, I was driving down the Long Island Expressway when I was living on Long Island. And I said to myself, there really is no value here when I leave. And so what am I doing? I don't really have a business. And so I spent the next, whatever, 10, it's probably more like 15 years. I spent the rest of the time trying to figure out what else can I do so that there really is a business here that's not 100% dependent on my time, effort, and energy. And it actually is something that may have value when I don't want to work. Can I sell it? Can I keep it going afterwards? So, there's all kinds of, I have, like, you have no idea how many tries I've had at trying to do that. Some are working actually right now, but there's been a lot of failed attempts. And so, one of the things you can do, and so a lot of you, actually have companies, and you have people like Ted was talking about his guys. And so, so one avenue is to hire people to work with you and have a firm, we'll call it, for lack of a better word. And that firm obviously can keep going once you leave. Now, I went the firm route and I didn't like it. I personally wanted to do the work, and I could get paid enough that I was making more than I would have made working. So that I was kind of like in this weird trap, where I was working for 2 or 3 clients at a time, and full time. So there was no time for anything else. And so that's where I spent a lot of my time. So I'll give you a couple of avenues I went down. My first really big attempt was, I said, so what am, how you see all these inventors like on Shark Tank and all that have all these ideas that they make lots of money on. Well, one of the things I'm not very good at is inventing like a product that people want. I don't know how to do that. I've tried. I sit there thinking about it, and after a while, it was just, it's like writer's block for me. I can't think of it. And so what I've done, I said, all right, what do I have that inventors don't have? And I kind of put the Shark Tank thing together. And I said, these guys come on to Shark Tank, they have an invention, they don't know how to really capitalize it and make money, but I know how to do all that. So I'll pretend like I'm a shark. I don't have any money, but that's, neither here nor there at that point. But I do have the knowledge, like you guys all do, to help them, make a business out of a product. And so I went around looking for inventors that had products that couldn't do it. So I started going to inventors clubs and different networking events, and I would tell people, when they'd stand up and they'd ask, okay, I'd ask a question, who are you? I'd say, well, I'm Jeff Peterson, and this is what I do, and I'm looking for inventors that are trying to get their products to market. And actually found one. It was unbelievable. And, we got it financed. It worked out pretty well, but we ran out of money. It was really underfunded. It was an escape respirator, and I actually have a patent for an escape respirator. We figured out how to make it, because of my manufacturing background, we figured out how to make it. And he couldn't do it. He just had the invention. So that was one. It didn't work. And so lately what I'm doing is teaming up with some of my clients to spin off a part of their business. And so I'll give you guys some examples. So one of them makes canopies for solar carports. And he started talking to me about, and so I'm his fractional CFO. And so they started talking to me about the fact that people want chargers attached to these canopies. And I said, well, why don't you make it a product and sell a product? But these guys were so they're architects. And so they're so far away from actually understanding what it means to make a product, market a product, build a brand, that I said, look, I'll help you do it, but you don't have to pay me. I'll be your fractional CFO for the rest of your business, but we'll go 50-50 on this other business. And I taught them all how to do it. And we're actually, so we started that, I don't know when that was, like April, maybe May. And so we actually may have a sale, our first sale coming up. And these things are $250,000 a piece. And there's another one behind it. And then, so it could end up being a pretty good sized business. And I didn't have to invest a penny, just my time. Another one, this person I know is a roofer. And so I'm her fractional CFO. And they have she just got into solar. She does solar repairs, but mostly because she's a roofer, she can go in and fix issues. And so she's been working with a company kind of as almost their outsourced roofer. It's like she likened it to what we do as fractional CFOs. She goes, I'm kind of their roofing company. And she goes, I have this idea that we could do this everywhere, all over the US. She goes, but I don't have a clue how to do it. Would you please, I would do it if you would partner with me. So she actually asked me to partner with her to do that. And that's working extremely well. We now have 2 clients. And I'm ready to hopefully sign another one here in Denver. So those are a couple of other things that I'm doing that didn't cost me any money to get started. It just gave me a way to use what I know how to do extremely well, coupled with somebody else that knows how to do something else really well. So it's kind of like my theory on finding an inventor. But these are business people that have business ideas, but they don't know how to do anything with them. So, those are my avenues that I'm pursuing. And so I'd like to talk to you guys about, like Ben, you have your own BSG advisors, and Ted, you have a group, and Jed, I know you're part of B2B CFO. Tony's got his own thing. So maybe you guys can add some color, and Michael has his own thing, some color as to how you think about the world and where you might be going. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with just having an independent job and going till you want to retire, making lots of money and being very happy. There's nothing wrong with that as well. But so I'll start with Ben. I'll bet Ben's always got something to say here. So
I don't know if that was a compliment or a warning, but
no, it's a good thing. Yeah. If I'm in a group like this, and everybody introduces themselves, what I say as a tagline is, because I work mostly with technology companies, and they're, it's just exactly what you say. We're finance people, and we're focused on finance, and we don't, we're not focused on selling. Well, they're technology people, and a lot of times they are so madly in love with their technology
that they will, if they get a chance to present to an investor, and they have 10 minutes, they'll spend 9 minutes speaking about in ununderstandable jargon and detail about their technology, and only, at the very end say, I'm looking for investors or something. So what I say is, I help to turn great technologies, help companies turn great technologies into great businesses. So it's kind of what you do. I try and do more. I'm more than a CFO. I brand myself as a CFO/COO.
Yep. Exactly.
Because we know what it takes to make a business successful. We know, we can look at the numbers. I can look at the numbers in somebody's P&L and balance sheet. I can look at it and I can say, you have a problem right here. But
Yep.
that isn't the way. Oops, I'm sorry. That isn't the way it works. But that's what you're doing in the background, in the back of your mind when they ask you to help them.
Yep. So, does anybody here read Business Week? Okay. So in this issue, last issue of Business Week, the most current one, you might want to just take a look. There's a really good article about the CFO role and how it's changed, and is changing dramatically right now from, basically a bean counter to a consultant to the CEO. Exactly, Ben, what you were just saying, and that COOs are going away, and it's all falling under the CFO, all that same role. Okay, Tony, we want to talk a little bit about where you're headed with your world?
Yeah, it's been been a good evolution. Jeff, we talked long ago about the number of different facets of my business, and one thing I've been focused on over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 months has been some of the service partners I have that can provide technologies and some advanced fintech stuff that I certainly could not directly. And what that does for me is, it bolsters my ability and things, ways to help folks. But secondly, those agreements provide residual and passive income. So the great thing about that is, you get those rolling for a number of clients. They're happy. All is well. And what it does is it gives you a nice baseline. You've talked before, Jeff, about kind of the variability of having too much concentration in 2, maybe 3 clients, and one falls off and then it's a scramble. The nice thing about that residual piece is it really does give you a bit of a, I don't want to say salary, but you get where I'm going, kind of a baseline of income that allows you flexibility to go to Tahiti if you want, or do project work, do shorter term work, really kind of help your flexibility in your scheduling, and set out what you want to do when you want to do it, right? And it's not I got these 2 great clients, I'm scrambling to get 2 more, and then I have a fifth. It kind of eases the pressure off of that stuff. And again, I've been able to do some nonprofit project work, and just some different things to kind of do more good and help more folks. So yeah, it's really been the concerted effort for the majority of this year is to really get that those service partners revenue stream kind of built up. And again, it really helps the client in ways that my 2 thumbs can't, or a hands-on person can't, because of the technology aspect. But yeah, that win for me, I mean, you mentioned kind of your partnerships and your allegiances, and it allows more time for building those networking things. I know you mentioned, and we talked about this before, you're a very, very dedicated networker. And there's work in the word networking for a reason, right? I mean, you got to put forth some effort. And so, it allows time for things like that, and you never know where a conversation leads. And, that's one of the things that I've really been focused on. And once, it still builds on itself from word of mouth and client referrals, and, being happy with the service providers and stuff. But, that's really been my focus, is to get that kind of baseline and keep building on it, obviously. But it allows that flexibility. So yeah, I always encourage, anytime you can create passive income streams and different revenue streams, anywhere you can, it's really good. And you mentioned your deal structure with no cash outlay. That's critical too, right? I mean, if you're spending more money than you're making, it doesn't matter how good of a thing it is. At the end of the day, we're all numbers people, and we want to be in the black. So yeah, that's really kind of my my 2 cents on, as far as that goes, to add on to what was already said, which I totally agree with. But having that passive revenue and income stream allows you to have those, conversations that you might otherwise not have, because you're kind of heads down on project work or client work, hands-on.
Yeah. Hey, so Tony, do you want to give us just like a quick snapshot of like what one of those looks like?
One of the services, one of the kind of the tech side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, one of the things you're doing.
Yeah. So for instance, we have a really cool service provider that focuses on, resonate with this group, especially eliminating the fraud, hassle, headache, and cost of cutting paper checks, right? It's the most inefficient way to pay anything in any facet. You think of Europe, they haven't paid via paper check in years. They can't, right? I mean, just the currency and just the entire environment. They've been on this for a while. America's still lagging. They're still north of about 60% of B2B transactions occurring via paper check. And again, if they haven't experienced fraud, they will. They've experienced the COVID hassle of folks having to be in the office, print checks, get them signed, do, that sort of thing. I had a client in CFO in oil and gas company in San Antonio. Their process was so archaic. They were having to do a check run on Thursday, overnight them to him check run on Wednesday, overnight them to him on Thursday to get back and process and send them out by Friday. So if you can imagine, 60 to 100 plus checks a week that he's having to physically sign, let alone the cost of, the postage and the overnight. And then he had just told me, he said, Tony, you got to help me. Before I joined on, they got $400,000 worth of fraud from bleach checks. And so it's really a way to transition from that. And, ACHs are a little safer, still pretty scary, but, you remit $72,000 in an ACH that might have 4 invoices on it. There's no remittance detail. So then their vendors calling your AP department going, what the heck is this for? Total time waste, right? And then, physical credit cards, they get hacked, you get hacked. Very, very risky on that well. So these virtual card payment platforms add a layer of security where the 16-digit code and expiration date, once that transaction happens, it evaporates. So it can't be reused, it can't be recharged.
Yep.
Secondly, the ultimate goal here is to make the remittance easier. And so with that, when that funding happens, and it funds just like an ACH, there's no lag, but when that funding happens, they get remittance detail for all 770 invoices on that payment. So it eliminates that inefficiency. And then, so you've protected against fraud, you've reduced your expense from check cutting. And then just like we're using our rewards cards to get points or miles or whatever, the client's getting between a 90 and 100 basis point rebate on a payment they were going to make anyway. So you kind of got a trifecta of wins for the client. And so, the ultimate win is multifaceted. And let's be honest, that rebate is fantastic, but the AP department and the controller, they're probably not going to see any of that. So, it's, that's an add-on cherry on the, cherry on top. But for them, day-to-day grind and the workload and the hassle and headache, it makes their lives easier. So when you combine all of those facets, you're making your daily processes easier for your people, less fraud, income stream from your, AP cost center, you're really kind of bringing technology to the forefront and just seeing how they can benefit on a number of ways. And it's cool to be able to help to that extent in that many ways. And certainly, like you said, nothing I could do personally, right? That's not a very heavily regulated industry.
Yep, that's great. Okay, Ted, you want to talk about like what your business and revenue streams are looking like?
Okay, I can add a few points here. One of the things you're talking about that I think sort of fits in with the conversation of a number of people here, and that is that I've been doing this full time for about 25 years as a fractional CFO controller, but I'm working with now mostly small to mid-sized businesses. I really found out that they have needs outside of finance and accounting. And so therefore, what I've done is, and I worked with Arthur Anderson and started off in audit and then went over to administrative services, which was spun off as Anderson Consulting, is now Accenture, but they have IT problems, they have HR problems, they have operations problems, they have marketing problems, they have tax problems. the time comes when anytime I start with a new client, I ask them, what's your exit strategy? Why are you building this company? Are you building it to be a legacy to pass on to your children and grandchildren? Are you looking to build it and increase the value and create a nest egg that you can then use it to fund your retirement in the lifestyle that you would like? You want to do an IPO? What are your goals and objectives? And then I also want to know what their other sources of income are and their personal income taxes, because that many times impacts the advice that I might give them, especially if it's a small company. So, but in working with these small to mid-sized companies over the last 20 plus years, I've really come to realize that they have these other needs, and I have some knowledge in those areas, but I'm not the expert. So I've brought into the team a man that, for example, an IT guy. He was one of the top IT positions at Pfizer for about 10 years. And so he's an IT guy and has all sorts of specializations in IT, cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. And then I brought in another guy who's a Six Sigma in operations and Kaizen and whatnot. And I brought in somebody else who's a CMO. So I've got a CFO, CMO, COO, CIO. I've got a business broker that when the time comes to sell their company, we can help them there. I've got some tax experts and doing some advanced tax strategies for them. And a CFE certified fraud examiner to go in there and do fraud audits and investigations like that, and then litigation support when the time is necessary. I used to have HR person, but that person went back into the corporate world. And now I have other people that I call referral partners that I work with. And I've got agreements with them, and we'll share some of the revenue as a referral, sort of like a commission, you might say. And I'll bring them in, and some HR people have an area of expertise in this area, another one in another area. So I'll bring in the right HR person with the right type of expertise for whatever that client's specific needs are. And so that's what I've done. I've tried to bring together this team of C-level professionals that can really help the client in all different areas.
Yeah, that's cool. So everybody's listening, you can see how different these business models are, even though we're kind of in the same world, but there's different ways you can go depending on what you like to do, what you know how to do, where you can gain traction and that sort of thing. So Michael, you want to talk for a few minutes about what you're doing? We got to get you off mute.
You're on mute.
Yes.
Yep.
You're speaking about me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm a CFO on the go. I'm an independent contractor. I worked in the real estate industry for my whole career up until my last job, which I became a glorified bean counter, is what you were talking about earlier. So I went on my own and was able to network into various clients, and they all had needs. And I was able to bring my 35 plus years of experience. As everybody else says, you're not just a CFO anymore. You're a business strategist. You're a resource which has a lot of arrows in their quiver, because we don't have all the answers, but I know somebody who does. So I've networked like crazy. I've increased my LinkedIn connections to over 5,500 people. I learn something new every day by going to these groups to meet new people, share my resources. It's all about creating relationships, providing a client not with just yesterday's financials, but where are we going in the future? I've worked for many companies that had no mission statement, where they may have a mission statement, but they told nobody about what the mission statement was. So everybody's working, but they have no idea why they're working. If you instill in people what the goals and objectives are of the company and get everybody on board, they're going to be much more productive, and they'll have a reason to go home at night and say, boy, we accomplished something. So it's I think we're all at a point in our careers where we're not just trying to be in the back room producing a financial statement that doesn't tell you anything except what happened yesterday. It's all about what's going to happen in the future. And you have to have like I say, a resource, being a resource to the owners or to the partners to help them grow the business. And like Ben said, if they don't know what their exit strategy is, how do you get there? So it's really having conversations and getting feedback from everybody that's involved, but making sure everybody's on the same page. Because when you have especially now when people are working remotely, they're not hearing those stories or having the conversations that we used to have in the old days around the water cooler or over lunch or a drink after work about
Yeah,
what,
you can't say that stuff anymore.
right.
All right, so Wade, you got something you want to weigh in on a little bit? You've been listening very intently today.
Right now, I'm in the process of listening because I'm pretty early in this process. So I'm trying to learn and absorb and kind of figure out what my next steps are. I've kind of gone into what I'll call semi-retirement and have been busier since I've been semi-retired in a lot of things. And I've been able to get a couple of interesting engagements, but it's not a business or a revenue stream that's consistent right now. And so there's some things I want to be thinking about and thinking about how I build it out.
Okay. So Max, how about you? You got something you want to?
I just took a new job starting on Monday as a CFO. I'm going back to corporate. So I kind of, I was dabbling on the side as I knew this job that I was currently in wasn't what I liked, and have a couple clients, but decided wasn't ready to make the full-time commitment yet.
Yeah, where'd you get hired at?
It's called BNZ Materials. We make refractory products. I'm north of Pittsburgh. We've got a plant there that runs 24/7 and another plant outside of Boston. We sell globally.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm excited. So
do you have experience with global sales and that sort of thing like that, or in that industry, or?
before my current job, I was basically the VP of finance for another industrial product manufacturer in the polishing, metal polishing business, and we mostly sold domestically, but we had some international. So this is a little bit more international, but the team that's been on the ground has been in there for 30 years. So I'm looking to show them some new things, but to learn some things as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a good step up. That's cool. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Because we have like 1 minute. Okay. All right, I will see you guys next month. It's going to always be on Tuesdays now. Okay. All right. See you, and Max, good luck in your new job.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
All right.
Thanks.